So, if you're the youngest of 3, then you know how Enhancement Shaman feels at the moment. You can still do everything your siblings can, but you won't be the first one to be picked for the team, am I right? But yeah, Enhancement Shaman can do everything all of the other DPS specs can. Which is 1. Elemental. Shit, my research should have been better. And this is what you will learn about today: talents, rotation, gear, stats, and tips about one of the 2 builds that Enhancement Shamans roll out today. Basically a build that can help you in both raids and Mythic Plus dungeons. The video will focus on the basics and the general things you want to know about enhancements, but if you want the details or more in-depth talk, hit us in the comment section or catch us on our stream and we can discuss the Primal Primer build, aka the other build. Let's kick it off with the talents. Like I said, there are 2 main builds people are running at the moment. The Primal build is a very strong single target option that takes advantage of maximum uptime on a boss or a target in general with as little movement as possible. We will keep this for another day since it's not really viable too much in M+, and might be a chore for newer players. Instead, you'll get a more well-rounded build that will not punish you as much for moving and doing mechanics, and you can take it to Mythic Plus with no issues. On the first row, take Lightning Shield. The majority of the charges will be gained through Storm Strike, and since the build focuses on smashing as many Storm Strikes as you can possibly do, this talent operates the best. Second row, we have Forceful Winds. Not much to say here. It's the best talent on the row for this build since it has the most damage output. It's a passive, so you don't have to worry about it. Third row is the utility row, and all options are viable depending on what you want to be able to do. As a default, and especially if you don't know what options to pick, get Spirit Wolf. This will give you a passive movement increase and damage reduction. It's a good option to boost mobility and deal with certain mechanics you know you cannot avoid. Fourth row, take Hailstorm. Because of the Azurite traits we will focus on, we want to be able to deal every damage type we can for maximum damage output. Taking this baby will make your Frostbrand an important part of your rotation. Fifth row is again a utility row. As a default, I recommend Feral Lunge if you find yourself in need of extra mobility and the option to swap from boss to add very quickly. If you like a bit more survivability, take Nature's Guardian for that nice save when you dip low. Sixth row is always going to be Sundering. It has the most DPS output and the Incapacitate effect is not bad either, especially in dungeons when you want to interrupt casts that cannot be interrupted. Remember that the range and the width of this are a bit smaller than the animation would indicate, and you will need to be positioned well before using it for maximum efficiency. Last row, Ascendant, is the key point for this build. Elemental Spirit is actually not far behind. For me, it seems with less than an overall percentage loss on damage, so it could be an alternative if you don't like Ascendants. However, the latter does provide burst windows which you might want sometimes, plus the extra range on the upgraded Storm Strike can help you when you cannot stick to the boss in melee range. Not to mention the improvements to Storm Strike it brings complements the build as a whole. Stats are a big part of getting the build to run smoothly, and when I say stats I mean haste. Boy, do you ever need a lot of haste. I'd say sim your character, but I would sack 5% of my DPS if I could get 1% extra haste. Depending on your gear, of course, the stats will change. A basic priority to follow is haste at the top, with crit and verse kind of tied between the two of them, and mastery and agility at the bottom. That doesn't mean eye level is not important, and that you can sack 10 to 15 eye levels for more haste. As an example, my stat weights look like this, and it's super weird because I have a lot of mastery plus mastery giving traits. Although it's still not a good example since I actually have a 355 trinket for enhancement, and my other one I still haven't replaced, and I've been trying to get them for almost 3 weeks now in the raid, and a whole week of farming M+ with little luck. Thanks Ian, it's so fun to get that pair of pants 3 times in a row. And speaking of pants, let's check some of the best trinkets you can get. It's always good to check the websites like herodamage.com and bloodmallet.com to see what sims the best. This is an example of a list of trinkets based off of eye levels and how much DPS they provide compared to each other. So by far the best one is Gale Caller's Boon. This trinket places a ward on the ground for 10 seconds that gives you a big haste boost with a 1-minute cooldown. This can easily be paired with our cooldowns, but do keep in mind to only use it when you know you will not be moving out of it during that time. Another option you want to aim for is Harlan's Loaded Dice. That drops from Freehold. Seeing as how the previous one drops from Shrine, running some mythics religiously can net you the best in slot trinkets at the moment, which of course can change with a new raid, and for that I will keep you guys up to date. But really, getting haste and crit procs for trinkets will almost never fail you. Moving to Azerite traits, you will start to notice that there is a lot of synergy going on in general for enhancement. Talents, trinkets and traits seem to perform incredibly when they are all selected based off of their synergy with each other. You can essentially sim your traits, which might look something like this. You might also get stuff like Lightning Conduit, which nobody uses but I have no choice in the matter. Or actually aim to mix and match and get that trait synergy boosting you on the meters. As such, what I recommend most is Natural Harmony, and you stack this 3 times. This trait is why we go Hailstorm for the frost damage, so we can get its buff. And if we look at the sim one more time, you can see it synergizes really well with Lightning Shield, Forceful Winds and Ascendant, with this combination becoming our best in slot. Ancestral Resonance is a clear second choice. How many of these you get is up to you. One though will provide you with those extra 10 seconds of Bloodlust because haste, since the proc chance doesn't stack. Speaking of 1-point wonders, Thunderon's Fury is a very good trait to have once, since the benefit it gives is proc chances, which never stack of course, I just said that. Yeah. And lastly, my personal favorite, Roiling Storm, which makes the RNG not so bad after all. Roiling Storm procs our Stormbringer passive automatically on top of its normal proc chance, once every 20 seconds, which is definitely nice, plus it buffs Storm Strikes, also nice. I guess Blizzard realized how awesome this RNG proc system is. There are of course other traits you can get, since most of them sim pretty close to each other, but for those I would recommend simming. Before we talk about the rotation, let's quickly look at the opener. You want to start with Rockbiter to generate some Maelstrom. After this, you apply the 2 buffs, Flame Tongue and Frostbrand, to start that Natural Harmony going. Pop your Wolves and do a Storm Strike to put it on cooldown, after which you pop Ascendants, resetting that cooldown, and start casting Wind Strikes. As for the rotation, there isn't one actually. The spec relies on procs, and to do well, you need to manage those procs to the best of your ability. As such, we have a priority list to understand what spell is more important to cast in which situation. First, Wind Strikes in Ascendance always. Flame Tongue when it's fallen off completely is the next most important thing. Keep Feral Spirits on cooldown, keep Frostbrand on you for that Hailstorm effect if it fell off, Ascendance always after the buffs are already on, Storm Strike regardless of procs, Sundering if there is more than one target. It's good in single target if you know no ads will spawn during its cooldown. Rockbiter to prevent capping on charges or if you are below 70 Maelstrom. Next is Refreshing Flame Tongue and Frostbrand during their pandemic window, meaning at 4.5 seconds or less. Fill in with Lava Lash when over 40 Maelstrom. Cast Rockbiter if all the previous situations do not apply, and if you really have nothing else to cast, Flame Tongue will always be good. For AoE, you won't change much. The one thing you add is Crash Lightning at the very top of the priority list. Maintaining the buff is a must on 2 or more targets. When it comes to consumables, simming is always important, and that will tell you what to enchant. For a general rule, you want Pact of Haste for rings, Quick Navigation for your main hand, and Gale Force Striking for your offhand. We talked earlier about how important haste is, and even at over 400 eye level you can never have enough. Unless you do, in which case the argument is moot. And with this point of view, keep haste gems as well. Seeing as how agility seems worse than haste, you won't have to bother with getting any expensive gems. For food, however, feasts are good because the 100 agility will be well worth it. Especially when your raid put effort into it. But if you have no feasts or you're on your own, swamp fish and chips will be the best option again, because haste. And to nobody's surprise, the agility flask and battle potion will be your go-to for your alchemical needs. Enhancement is not all a shaman can do. So if you want to roll with the big boys, we have 2 videos on Elemental that can get you up to par with the talents, gear, rotation, tips, so you can start cooking some meatballs in raids and Mythic Plus. Shout out to our Patreons, Hellhunter, Antimatter, Maverick and Helldope for supporting us with their hard-earned cash. Or blood money. We really don't know enough about these people. If you want to become our Patreon and get the perks we have ready for you, check the link down below. Thanks for watching the video, hope it was helpful, and I'll see you guys in the next one.